Good afternoon. This is David Birch doing Hump Day for Sister Nelson. We are continuing in our series, Lift Every Voice and Sing. And today's title is, What Does Victory Look Like? We're instructed in the hymn to lift every voice. Well, where does that lifting start? In taking a look at last week's lesson, we see that we started talking about a man named I Lift. His name, most of us realize, is Moses. His name only is mentioned a mere 800 times. The only other name that is mentioned quite frequently is that of Jesus. How did he get the name Lift? The Hebrew people, out of fear that they would overtake the Egyptians, their pharaoh, Ramses, instituted a policy of infanticide. All the baby boys were to be thrown into the Nile River. However, a mother named Jochebed proclaimed that Ramses might get all the other little boys, but you won't get mine. For 3 months she hid him until she could no longer hide him any longer. She made an ark with papyrus reeds from the Nile and waterproofed it with tar, asking God to take care of her baby. You know, the God that never sleeps or slumbers. He instructed the crocodiles, you may view, but you don't get to chew. And all of a sudden, Moses finds his lungs and starts crying. This drew the attention of Pharaoh's daughter, who had also gone down to the Nile. And instead of following the instructions of her daddy to get rid of the Hebrew babies, she lifts him out of the water and gave him the name I Lift, or I Draw. And he not only got lifted out of the water, but he also got lifted to a position of privilege. He was educated, but came to the realization that God gives to us that he may give through us. He said, I got lifted, so I need to lift my people. People who have been lifted also need to lift. Our passage for today is coming from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 57 and 58. And it reads, But thanks be to God, who gives us victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my dear brothers, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor is not in vain. In our passage, Paul says, thanks be to God. He gives us victory. And at the end of the Negro National Anthem, we are encouraged to march on until victory is won. Well, how do we know when victory is won? How do we know when Black Americans have victory? A most remarkable example of victory occurred when a group of unlettered, formerly enslaved, met in an old building in August at the close of the Civil War in April of 1865. They bore the marks of slavery on their bodies. simply knowing that the university meant a place of learning. They took steps to begin a school which gradually developed into what we know as State University and is now Simmons. Today, Simmons is a large and flourishing college with grounds and buildings in the heart of Louisville. Now, once again, Paul says he gives us victory. The Greek word in the New Testament for victory is Nike. Nike is also the Greek goddess of victory, whether in war or friendly competition. So, essentially, the Nike apparel literally means victory. But here's that question. How do we know when you have victory? What does victory look like? Moreover, what constituted victory when the lyrics of this song were penned by James Weldon Johnson and the music set by his brother, John Rosamond Johnson. To lift every voice means that it is not a solo. It's supposed to be a choir. So that means Lottie Dottie and everybody needs to be lifted. And it says, lift till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound as loud as the roaring sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. So the first thing that we see are the harmonies of liberty. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17 says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And in heaven, there is liberty. But what do we have here on earth? We have a hot mess. We have oppression. When James Johnson wrote, till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty, the plea is that earth gets on the same page as heaven and rings in harmony for liberty. The word liberty means a world free of restraints, because the history of Black America has lots of restraints, primarily because we didn't have access. In the song, Lift Every Voice and Sing, ringing with liberty is a reference to the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, which is cracked. A cracked bell cannot ring. And for Black Americans, liberty has always been cracked. Letting our rejoicing rise as high as the listening skies is a metaphor for God. Therefore, God is listening to see if we're shouting about liberty, which Black people have never really been able to do. There have been some seasons, such as the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, the end of Civil War in 1865, the Supreme Court, there we go, declaring the Montgomery bus segregation policies are unconstitutional. Then the March on Washington in August of '63, and the passing of the public accommodations in 1964. And finally, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So there have been some periods when we've been able to rejoice, but it's kind of low-level rejoicing. It's time for high rejoicing that reaches the listening skies to the ears of God. So I ask that you consider something. What is an event that took place in America to give hope that liberty on earth is aligned with heaven? I'll let you think about that one. So, we start off, lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Then it says, let it resound as loud as the rolling sea. The word resound means to echo back and forth. There's a cartoon where two animals have come to the edge of a cliff and they hear people talking, and the people are mocking, as an echo does. It reverberates, it repeats what is being said. So the two animals, one of them is saying, you shut up. Then the next one says, no, you shut up. So between the two of them, they keep this going on for a while until they're both worn out. The brothers Johnson knew the sound of the rolling sea because they lived in Florida. Those of us here in Louisville have never, our body of water here is the Ohio. And it's not as noisy as those on the East Coast or the West Coast, where that water is constantly coming against the shore. The children of Israel left Egypt when the sea rolled back, taking them to freedom. The brothers Johnson challenged that heaven and earth are in harmony, and it resounds from earth to heaven and back again. Then they start with some teaching. It says, sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Why do we study the past? Well, we study the past because Romans chapter 15, verse 4 says, for everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance and the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. Notice the sequence: faith, hope. We have a dark past. We as black people have a dark past. And there's a concerted effort right now to keep Americans, especially black Americans and white Americans, from knowing the dark past upon which this nation was founded. It is critical that we learn history, because whoever has power to control the narrative also has the power to frame history. Black people have a dark present today because we have a dark past. Our dark past has to do with the mortality rates among black women. They're 4 times higher than any others. That same mortality is seen why the black community was impacted more by COVID-19 than any other group. And our dark past has also laid the foundation for a disproportionate number of black men suffering from hypertension. So here's another area to be considered. What is a dark moment in your personal past or family history, and how has that past inspired you to greater faith? The present is hooked to the past. If you go to see a doctor, that doctor is going to question your family history because based on medical science, you can tell some things about health outcomes and health determinants based on history and also based on zip code. More so about a lineage. So it is important that you know where you come from. It's important that you know your lineage. The dark past is why we have a stagnated black community. Areas where black people live have been isolated through social construction and its socially constructed reality. Black people have been made to make some great accomplishments, have been able to make some great accomplishments, despite that dark past. Before 1890, 20 black Baptist colleges had been established. This is 25 years after slavery, and remarkably, 11 of those institutions are still in existence today. So our dark past has taught us faith because right out of slavery, a people who had nothing did something to give future generations something. And we see on the list in 1879, State University was formed here in Louisville, Kentucky. And in 1916, the name was changed to Simmons. Now, if slaves could do this peeping through a crack, what should we be doing? We have more advantages than they ever had. The faith of Simmons College of Kentucky founders shines through its dark past. Once a highly respected institution of higher learning, was set to demise during the Depression years. Needless to say, the fact is that Simmons thrives today as a growing HBCU, and it's a result of the faith that has come through our dark past. Here's something else for you to consider. Who are some of the prominent black people who have made provisions to help lift other black people as they have climbed upward? So we sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Notice the sequence: faith, then hope. The hope of our present. The sequences in the song is as the sequence biblically that we see in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. Paul says, "Now abideth faith, hope, and love." So, faith comes before hope. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. So your faith, why do we study history? Because your faith is going to teach you. And history is supposed to teach you that faith comes before hope. Here's something else to consider. In what ways does the present state of black people offer you hope about our future. Well, what do? We march on till victory is won. What does victory look like? Some people think, well, we've already got victory because we have black quarterbacks, we've had a black president, we have a black vice president. That's not victory. It's not about who's winning on the field, because in most instances, the only thing that has changed is the location of the field. They went from a cotton field to a sports field. Victory is won when we have resources and wealth as a people. Black people are 13% of the population, yet we control less than 3% of the nation's wealth. And it has been projected by the year 2055, black people will have zero median wealth. So victory is attained when resources that were stolen from us and denied us for more than 300 years. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, a woman named Mary Church Terrell coined the phrase, lift as you climb. She was asserting that black people need to climb. And as we climb, we should lift some other folks. The brothers Johnson admonish us to lift every voice. That means there are some prominent voices that need to lift some other people. Those who have degrees should be lifting those that do not. Those who have skills should be lifting those who are unskilled. Victory happens when we achieve and attain and then reach back to pull our people along. Well, here's our life application. What does victory look like for you personally as a black person? A business where you provide employment and services to others, a stable family life, living debt-free. The easiest way to note when you have victories is to write down the symbols of victory so that you know when you achieve them. What are some of the hindrances to black people achieving victory that resounds loud as the rolling sea? Well, one of the things that gets us in trouble is we have a crab mentality. No one gets to grow any higher because we're going to clamp onto them and pull them back down. We sometimes also have a plantation mentality because we end up doing things to hurt each other. Well, how do we eradicate that? First off, thank God for the victories we've experienced through our lifetime. We also need to be in prayer for those who are undergoing things that are preventing them from experiencing victory. We also need to follow the example of Christ and let nothing stop us from being all that we've been called to be. We need to remember that our giving promotes victory throughout the kingdom of God. And although you may have experienced very few victories in your life, going back to our life application, define what victories you've experienced so that you will know when you have achieved them in the future. Thank you for joining us today. I pray that something has been said that will lift you, that will cause you to think about lifting other folk. Next week, we'll take a look at the stony road. Till then, be safe, be blessed.